guys in the dark.
I've had many travel experiences that were scary, and travel horror stories throughout my years as a solo traveler. There was this one time that I dove into a freezing ocean to swim with wild dolphins, only to come face to face with a dangerous fur seal. Or the time that I had spent $400 on taxis in Dunedin due to an invisible bus. This travel horror story occurred when I was spending a month in Morocco during my gap year in Europe. I had just enjoyed a few weeks in Marrakech, baking there with a local woman, exploring the city, and experiencing a traditional Moroccan hammam. But it was time to head off to my next destination, which was Turkey. To get to Turkey, I had to go to the Casablanca airport. Now, I was originally supposed to fly out a week later. I had planned to head out there to go visit the Instagram famous Blue City. But my mom got nervous after experiencing the woes of being a female in Marrakech. And I found out it's especially dangerous to climb the Atlas Mountains in winter. So it wasn't entirely her fault. I ended up with 3 spare days in Casablanca. They were the longest days of my life. The city feels post-apocalyptic. Buildings are half-built, with crumbling concrete clinging to the steel frames. There are streets barren of people and covered in a thick sheen of dust. Even the people look haggard as you pass by them on their way to the few attractions in the city. I was staying in the Best Western by the train station for ease of access to the airport, and because it was all that I could get with my credit card, points at the time. There's a rule out there that everyone tells you: don't eat uncooked food. It's because they wash the produce in tap water, which is known for being very bad for you. After one extremely trying day, I went to the hotel restaurant for dinner. My food had come with an unexpected side salad. Beaten down from the day, fed up with the anxiety, and I was generally starving. I took a bite without even thinking. I swallowed, and then I realized my mistake. But it couldn't be that bad, right? I mean, Best Western is an American chain. Surely their employees use American standards for their food. Nope. Within 24 hours, I had the worst case of rocket butt and explosive vomit that I'd ever experienced, thanks to what I'd later learn was a parasite from unclean tap water. And of course, that was the day that I needed to fly to Turkey. It was genuinely the second worst flight of my life, after the time I flew with an ear infection. I had puked in the check-in line after running through my plastic bag supply. There was nowhere to buy a ginger ale or a water before boarding the flight at the airport. The poor stewardess couldn't understand why I wanted to puke bags before we'd even taken off. The man right next to me was visibly cringing as far away as possible to me. But it definitely doesn't end there. Once I arrived in Turkey, I thought the nightmare would be over, until I realized I was a day early for my visa. Now, to enter Turkey, you need a visitor's visa that we can buy online for $75. I had done this months earlier when I definitely planned to arrive in Turkey. I'd even booked it a week early, just in case. It didn't even occur to me to check the visa when I rescheduled my trip. I was certain that I'd be fine. Unfortunately, they won't let you into the country, even if you're green at the gills and are clearly about to pass out right in front of them. Come to think of it, that may have been why they didn't want me to be in the country. Thankfully, they have kiosks at the airport to buy a new visa. They weren't working, so I had to wait 2 hours for someone to fix one before I could even swipe my credit card. I got a new visa and crawl into a cab to get to the hotel that I couldn't leave for 3 days except to go to the hospital. So, moral of this story, check your visas and don't eat salad in Morocco. I have visited all these exotic countries over the past couple of years, from South America to Fiji, to North America and Far East Asia, and I got sick only once. Once. And that was just the unusual lucky you get from being around so many people in the hostels. But this time I knew it was something much worse. Rolling around in there for days on end, sleeping, and hoping that it would go away just turned it from bad to worse. Looking at yourself in the mirror and trying to convince yourself that it's the lighting in the bathroom that makes you look yellow is a real tricky thing to pull off. The scary thing was when I tried to go to the bathroom and I couldn't walk the 2 minutes that it took. Like physically, I couldn't. I was only 28. What gives? Eventually, I did make it back to my bed. My heart was racing like I had just finished a sprint, and then I'd passed out. Oh, I knew something was ever so wrong. Grabbing a taxi with my friend to the hospital at the time truly saved my life. The words from the doctor rang through my ears. It's a good thing that you had just come in, because in a couple of days, you would have been dead. I was in there for 2 weeks. The doctors had no idea what was wrong with me. It was a tricky time, as it could have been anything. All those possibilities, like cancer, things like that, were getting talked about. And it was really starting to make me nervous at the time, especially once I told them all the countries that I had visited. Finally, after every single test possible on my blood, the only thing that it showed was a small virus that normally is so harmless that you couldn't even get the common cold from it. But somehow it had made my white blood cells attack my red blood cells, and it destroyed them, nearly all of them. However, once I had the blood back in me, and the doctors knew what had happened, tablets were able to stop it, and slowly over the next weeks and months, I had gotten my strength back. It can definitely happen to anyone, even if you think that you're out of the woods, so to speak, with the dangerous countries. It can even happen in the countries that you thought would be the most safe and sound. My definite advice to you is if you're feeling unwell, just go to the hospital after a couple of days if you don't start to get better. No amount of money you save not going to the hospital worth your health. My bizarre travels take me to places like Somalia. I spend 5 days in the notorious country. One of the most surreal and eye-opening experiences was walking across no man's land, from Ethiopia to Somaliland. As you walk from border to border, there's no guards that can assist you. You're all alone. Well, if it wasn't for the 500 locals swamping you, trying to assist me to the unknown where you could get shot in the head or kidnapped quicker than you could sip your bottled water. So what was I doing walking across this border? Unbeknownst to me, walking this border was the safe part of the country, and I was about to leave it. I continued my trip deep in the lands of Somalia, Mogadishu, which never fails to impress, and it was here that I realized that I was out of my depth. One day I was on the beach, playing football with the local kids, watching the fishermen walk past with their large sailfish, right there on their heads. Then the next day, I'm running for cover as a terrorist decided to blow up the market. I was meters away from the scariest experience that I ever wished to encounter. As I stood there in disbelief, scared and confused, my guards had grabbed me back into my guest house for a swift exit to safety. I had no choice but to exit the area, and it was demanded by the guards who were there for my safety. It was a very sad moment for me, as I had just realized that not only was I close to death, but others around me must have died. This is not an easy thing to digest for anyone. Naturally, I worried for everybody's safety and prayed the friendly residents of Mogadishu were okay. But sadly, 51 people died from the suicide car bomber that struck the busy market that very day. With the explosion ripping through the shoppers, stalls, and vehicles, no one nearby had stood a chance. As I look back on that situation, I've always been mixed with feelings, guilt being the first. Why guilty? I feel guilty from the relief that I'm okay. The relief that I didn't explore the market that very morning. Then I feel sad. Sad knowing that so many innocent people had lost their lives. A lot of people there were very friendly, and they didn't deserve this. I wish I could have done more at the time because I was helping the wounded. But for my own safety, that was just not possible. So my sense of direction is pretty horrific. And there was a time that I was in a very remote part of Australia. And I wanted to go meet up with some friends at a lake. I grabbed a bike and I set off. My map was in my hand. All was going pretty well, until I realized that I was in a really, really remote part of the town, and pretty soon realized that I was also on an incline. My poor sense of direction, and my infantile relationship with maps inadvertently led me up a mountain. I was about 2.5 hours into my voyage. There was no sign of any life around me. The noises had gotten stranger, and there was definitely no lake in sight. I looked at my map, wondering how it could deceive me, and where our relationship took a wrong turn. Pun intended. Then I turn around, and boom! I get a flat tire. It was getting darker. I was shitting bricks by the second, and any moment now, something was going to jump out and eat me alive, because, logic. I eventually stop caring that my bike will collapse on me, and I start riding it down a very rocky trail at a pretty fast pace, just hoping to get out of there as fast as possible. Safety hazard. Absolutely. But again, logic. Several minutes later, I finally see a highway. So I get back on a known trail, and just a few kilometers up, I see the sign where I missed my turn for the lake. After my 2-hour detour, I had no desire to be near anything wet, as I was already soaked from exhaustion. So I tried to get reception, and see if anyone could pick up and get me. Eventually I was able to track down some elderly Australian men who could see my dilemma, and gave me their phone, and a large pint of Australian beer to save the day.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.